Hi, listeners, and welcome to a new episode of Worlds Collide, the podcast about moving abroad. I'm your host, Victoria, and I want to thank you for being here and for listening to my podcast. I appreciate it so much. And then, of course, I always mention it in the beginning. So if you are a frequent listener and you haven't done it yet, then why don't you leave me a 5-star rating at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to a podcast. That would help me immensely to be more recognized and get a bigger audience. And then I have not really mentioned that before, or not as much. You can also now listen to this podcast on YouTube. There are even a few videos. And yeah, you can also push the subscribe button there, and you will be one of the first subscribers, actually. And then, listeners, I have one question for you this time. I was wondering if there are questions that you would like me to ask my guest. So if you have any, or if anything comes to mind, then reach out to me. You can do this on Instagram, or you can also just shoot me a quick email. My email is worldscollide123pod@gmail.com. Yes, and tell me your thoughts. Okay, so now enough of that. So now I just want to do this quick introduction to this week's episode with my guest, Alex. Alex's partner, Rachel, she was already on this podcast. She was here in this season in episode 7. It had the name From Paris to DC, a French artist in America. And so, yeah, so this is kind of attached to her story because, like, she's coming up quite a lot in this episode. But Alex is originally from Mexico. And we talk a little bit about his childhood and then how he came to the US. And then he moved further for studying abroad in Belgium and Ireland. And then how the story continues. Listen to yourself. Here's Alex's story. Today, my guest is Alex. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. And you?
Well, so far so good.
Well, so far so good. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so where are you calling from right now?
I am in the Washington metropolitan area, specifically Northern Virginia.
Mm-hmm. And is this where you are from originally?
No, I'm originally from Guadalajara, Mexico.
Okay, so this is where the story starts. I heard from your wife, she was also a guest on this podcast a few weeks ago, that you moved away from Mexico when you were a little child?
Um, yes, well, yes and no. We traveled a lot when I was a kid, to Texas, back to Mexico, and then I had an opportunity to spend a year, probably when I was 11, to Vancouver, Canada.
Ah, okay.
Then we moved back and then went back to Mexico. And then, yes. And then eventually moved to the United States. Yes.
Okay, do you remember how old you were?
Permanently, to move
Yeah.
permanently.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably 19.
Ah, okay, so you were not even like a child. You were already an
Well,
adult.
as a child, we kind of lived in Texas and
Mm.
moved back to the United States, go back to Mexico. My father and my uncle, they had a business, and we spent a lot of time in Texas.
Okay, where in Texas was it?
McAllen, around the border area between Reynosa and McAllen, Edinburgh, Texas. Very different now. It's where you hear all those horrible stories about.
Sorry, uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, I also live in Texas, but I still don't know where that is.
If you go down, do you know where South Padre Island is?
Yes.
All right, so you go inland from
Uh-huh.
there, and it's about maybe 150 miles west of Brownsville.
Okay. Ah,
So that
okay.
so
Mm-hmm.
that's about it.
So you were in the United States when you were 19, and how long did you stay then?
Well, I mean, I came here in part because I went to university.
Okay.
Um, Moved out here to study first to Penn State, and
Oh.
then I figured out that Penn State, yeah, I moved to York, Pennsylvania, and because the Penn State system, I mean, it's a long story, but Penn State system, you don't go to the main system unless, anyway, I wanted to study electrical engineering,
Uh-huh.
and it was very difficult to get in at the time.
Okay.
And after studying there for 1 year, it became very clear to me that I could not afford paying out of state tuition because I was not in any type of scholarship or anything.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering that because I mean, the United States are famous for having outrageous prices for
Yeah, yeah.
tuition.
Well, at the time, I was already an American. I had already a green card
Uh-huh.
because when I was a child, there was this system of it was called border residency program.
Mhm.
Doesn't exist anymore. It's something that existed on the 70s.
Okay.
Uh, Long story short, I was already in the U.S. as a resident, and
Mhm.
so although I was able to pay the same prices as U.S. citizens, meaning not international students, because obviously the difference is very big sometimes.
Mm.
I was not an in-state resident in Penn State, so I decided to move to Maryland
Okay.
to go to University of Maryland, which is where they had a much more lenient policy on which if I lived as a resident in the state for 6 months, I could just change my plates, change my driver's license, and put my legal residency in Maryland, and I could be turned into an in-state student.
Mhm.
And for me, that it was the difference between paying, I think at the time it was $9,000 for a year to $2,500,
Yeah,
which I
that's
could have.
huge difference.
Yeah, but it still is. I mean, it still is.
Yeah, it still is. And
So yeah.
okay. And and then you became an international student after this?
Well, I stayed here in the States. I finished my undergrad.
Mhm.
Then I went to study my one of my one of my masters to the University of Delaware. So from the Washington, that's how I ended up in the DC area the first time because University of Maryland is right outside DC. It's in College Park, Maryland, which is basically the metropolitan area of DC. There is a
Okay.
metro stop from DC at the College Park campus.
Uh-huh.
So basically, it's in DC, but it's still University of Maryland because it's on the limits of the state of Maryland.
Okay. And but so okay, so this is stupid, but were you not like super cold like all the time because you just moved from a very hot climate to
It's not very hot in
ki-
Guadalajara. Guadalajara is
ah
about
okay. But Texas was.
right, right. Yes. No, I mean yeah. Texas was very hot. I used to hate the summers in Texas,
Mm,
like despise them with all my with
yeah.
passion because
I understand. Yes.
I love Texas. I mean, I really really enjoyed my time over there, and I have cousins and I have family. I still have family in Texas.
Uh-huh.
But Guadalajara is actually the second biggest city in Mexico, and it's high in the mountains.
Ah,
It's
okay.
it's not
So,
as high. It's not as high as Mexico City, but it's don't remember. I think maybe it's 1,500 meters above sea level.
so you have like a nice breeze.
Oh, it gets cold. It gets like
Mhm.
minus. It gets below zero
Oh,
in
okay.
the winter.
Oh, so you have seasons for all four seasons.
8 seasons in the mornings.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Because it gets very cold in the mornings, and then by noon it's about 24 Celsius or
Uh-huh.
like about 72 Fahrenheit.
Mhm.
So the weather wasn't the problem. I think the most important that at the very beginning, this is a while back, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like Rachel
You're
said, not like young
you're
chicken
not.
anymore.
Yeah.
But back then, although there were a lot of you know Mexican American and Latino population in the United States, in the Northeast there was not a lot of
There was
Mexicans,
not, I bet. Yes.
and so funny enough, food was the problem because
Oh,
Mexican food was basically Taco Bell and Old El
right.
Paso,
Yeah.
and that was it. I
That
mean,
was it, yeah.
that was it. It was like Old El Paso Taco Night was basically the best thing I could hope for.
Mm.
and
Sounds like a disappointment.
it was not very good. And Taco Bell was a different thing than today, because back then you could basically buy a dozen tacos in Taco Bell for about $2.50, and trust me, it was mystery meat.
Yeah, I mean, I have not really tried Taco Bell ever. I went.
Now it's actually pretty good,
Oh,
I
is
have to
it?
say.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
I have no idea. I only had like the cinnamon buns for
yeah.
breakfast or something. Because I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I try not to eat all this like junk food all the time.
Oh, trust me, it's you're doing well.
Okay. Maybe I give it a go. Okay, and so the food, but did you not like the cuisine over there?
Yes, but so I was a college student. I was 19, and I was as stupid as any 19-year-old
Yeah.
college student is. So basically, I was surviving on oodles of noodles and
Mhm.
Taco Bell run nights and maybe Hot Pockets. And I discovered the
Mhm.
entire wide range of American teenage food, and, the bags of Doritos with the beer that you couldn't buy, but somehow you ended up acquiring anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
And on
Okay,
top of
got
it,
it.
I was an engineering student, so you can imagine that engineers get a little bit more weird uh, when they get a little bit overexcited. So junk food definitely was the fuel.
Okay. Got it. But okay, so but you eventually moved abroad.
Yes, I stayed in the United States. I graduated from Maryland. Then I went and lived in Delaware, at the University of Delaware.
Oh,
I went and did a master's there. First, I worked in a bank. I went and worked a couple of years for the Wilmington Trust Bank outside of in Wilmington, Delaware.
that sounds a little bit different than what you studied.
Well, I started studying engineering, and by my third year, the economy was gotten really, really bad. I
Mm.
mean, this is the time in which we went through like the massive recession. Nobody could get a job, so
Yeah.
I went to my with my counselor and my school counselor, and told them, is the where what can I do with what I have studied, which is something that we can do in American universities that you cannot do in Europe.
Mhm.
Uh, these are the credits I have. How can I get out of here as soon as possible so I can get a job,
Okay.
because I'm broke. And I have taken a lot of economic classes, and a lot of mathematics. I started as
Mhm.
electrical engineer and mathematics major. And he told me, it's like, well, as a minor, you took economics and you have a ton of math. Why don't you try to get a degree in economics? And I
Sure.
was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was like, okay, will that get me a degree that can get a job? And he's like, sure. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. I in
Okay.
the My third year, I switched to economics. I took a couple of extra summer sessions, and I was able to get my credits to get my economics degree.
Mhm.
And I got a job at the bank at Delaware, which is the place to get a job in a bank because
Okay.
the entire state is banks.
Oh, I did not know that.
Probably every single credit card you had comes from there, because
Oh,
they have the most corporations in America than any other state combined.
and it's so tiny.
That's why, because they have a lot of tax breaks and tax.
Ah,
There is no
okay.
income tax,
Uh-huh.
so yeah. So no, it was great. I mean, it was a very good experience. So, and from there, while I was at the bank, I figured I couldn't really do much just with my degree, and enrolled in a master's program there, at the
Okay.
University of Delaware. And yeah, and while I was at Delaware, and that's what it was interesting. I had talked actually to a Belgian person when I was at Maryland. They were trying to get some people to come and spend a year abroad in Belgium. And
Mhm.
when I was in Delaware, I met a lot of French and foreign students, because they had a very healthy foreign student community.
Mhm.
And so I had been in France when I was younger. My first year of college, actually, before I moved to the United States, I spent it in France. I was at the
Mhm.
University of Angers. I was a math student.
Okay.
So I somewhat spoke the language. I didn't really speak a lot. I mean, I didn't do very well in France because it was my first time that I was abroad by myself, and I think I
Uh-huh.
had a little bit too much of party time, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Well,
So
sure.
I always had this idea that I wanted to return to Europe, and
Uh-huh.
the opportunity presented itself for me to not necessarily continue because I was actually already finished my master's in Delaware, but to enroll into a master's slash doctoral program in
Mm-hmm.
Belgium.
Okay.
And so I applied, and they took me in. I basically one day I was just like, I'm tired of this.
Okay.
It'll be fun, and pick up my things and, and left for
Okay,
Belgium.
so okay, so and where in Belgium was it?
It's in Louvain-la-Neuve, which is outside of Brussels. Is in the French
Okay.
part.
Okay, I was like expecting a city that I've heard of, but not that one.
It's a built city that was built from nothing. When do you know Leuven?
Uh,
They have
no.
a really nice. It's one of the big Flemish cities that is outside of Brussels. They
Uh-huh.
have a very big university called the Catholic University of Louvain.
Okay.
And when they had the language troubles, the school divided into a French version and a Flemish version.
Ah, uh-huh.
And so they had to build in the middle of the night. Well, not really, but it felt like that way. It seems
Oh, okay.
a brand new town for the French students, and that's where I
Ah.
ended up.
Okay, so your program was it then in French?
That is correct. Well, it was
Oh,
English and French.
how did you manage the language?
Hardly.
Yeah, okay.
It was very tough at first. English was no problem because I've been
Uh-huh.
speaking
Yeah.
fairly. I was speaking English since I was a kid. Funny enough, my first language that I learned as a second language was French because my parents had this idea that they wanted me to learn French, and they put me in the French school when I
Ah,
was in
okay.
Mexico.
Uh-huh.
But I was never very confident on it because I never really spoke with a lot of people. I was
Right.
very book smart, I suppose, on French. I could read
Uh-huh.
it,
Okay, you could read it,
so
but no
and I could
conversation.
understand it, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So when I got there, the classes that I had to take in French actually was quite a challenge because I discovered two things. I don't know if it's the same in Germany, but first thing I discover is that doesn't matter whatever you do the entire year, your entire class depends on one exam you take at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end
it
of the class.
does. Yes.
And the second thing is that sometimes that darn exam is as an oral exam.
Oh, oh, yeah, that sucks. If you
And
don't take the
so
language.
and
Oh.
so I remember one particular class. Oh my god. It was the first one I had to take it, the first oral that I had to take in my entire life, and I had to take it in French.
Ah.
That
And
I still
were you scared? I mean, nervous,
I, s-
everything?
I still have nightmares about it.
Oh,
I have PTSD.
sure.
I'm
PTSD
still
does
I'm
not
still
miss.
wake up in the middle of the night, sweating cold, and going like, yes, yes, 34, 34.
Was it in math? So at least you could only
No, it
use
was it was
numbers.
economic history.
Oh yeah, no, it's a hard one then.
Yes, because I had to tell and describe theories. I took an econometrics test oral in French, and that was actually not as bad because I could actually write things on paper,
Mm-hmm.
but I still had to explain them, right? But if my
Yeah.
equations were right, it was okay.
Yeah. But do you remember, did you take like any French classes or?
I did. The school was very good in that respect. They were very very good with the foreign students. I mean, I really had a very good experience, and they really made you fit in. Like one of the things that was very strange is that I arrived from the United States, and when they at the time I had become a citizen already in the
Mm.
United States, and I came in with an American passport, and when I went to register the secretary, which I discovered that secretaries in universities have an amazing amount of power, not so much on the power itself, but because they know how things are done.
Okay.
And so she asked me, it's like, okay, so you come from the United States? Yes. This is when I needed to pay my fees, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, yes. And so, okay, so, but you have a Spanish name. It's like, yeah, I'm from Mexico. Just so do you have a way to claim that you're from Mexico? It's like, yeah, I have a Mexican passport. Okay, so with the police, you're going to go and register with your American passport because that's the visa they gave you. And with the
Uh-huh.
university, you're going to register with the Mexican passport.
Oh.
And I'm like, why is that? Well, because Belgium has an educational treaty with Mexico or with Latin America in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically was registered like if I was a Belgian student. So I got
Oh.
the national security. I got subventions for my living. I got a stipend. It's not that I had a scholarship. It's that they were just treating me like if I was a Belgian student.
Right, right, right. So it was like way cheaper. Like,
Well,
I
I paid
mean,
600 at the time. It was for the entire year.
for the entire year.
It
Wow.
was it was
And
600. Wait, wait, no, that was it was 6,000 francs. So that was about $250
that
at
is
the time.
crazy. And do you remember what the fees would have been when you would
Ten
have
thousand dollars.
how much?
Ten thousand
Um,
dollars.
but isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, good for you, but I mean, as an American, that sucks,
Well,
you know?
worse yet, because I did have American classmates and they ended up paying that.
Yeah.
Worse yet, eventually we'll get to this, but I moved to Ireland after this, and the exact same thing happened to me in Ireland.
Again?
Not because of the Mexican thing, but because when I applied to Ireland to the university, because I
Uh-huh.
was considered a Belgian student, all my papers went through Ireland as if I was an European Union
European,
resident.
right.
And so I paid European Union fees, which again, it was Trinity College. So for European Union, it was something like 2,000 euros.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
for,
uh-huh.
and outside of the European Union, it was something like $30,000.
Oh my god. I mean, did you ever tell that to the other American students?
Yeah, yeah. We had a friend that unfortunately he had done the same thing. He had been living in Finland and he applied from Finland.
Uh-huh.
No, but no, sorry. The mistake he did is instead of applying from Finland from his home university, he sent all his papers from his parents' house in Boston,
Ah,
and
okay.
he got tagged as an American.
Mm,
And so he once that they tag you, you cannot change your
I see.
classification. And,
Okay.
and and that was terrible because it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. Oh my god, the difference.
Yes.
It's but were they ever got like did they were they mad at you too? I mean,
No, no, no. I mean,
no, okay.
that's the. I mean, I would have been mad, but they were not mad at me because
Yeah.
I,
It was
I didn't do anything wrong. That's
yeah,
just
yeah,
the way that they
yeah.
were doing it. But they were just like, "Oh, I wish I could have known." I was like, "Well, I
Wow.
didn't know it myself, huh?
Right, so you're expecting to pay all that
I was
money
expecting to
and
spend a
then
lot of money.
yes, and
Yeah,
then you were like, "Woohoo, I have
that
$10,000 extra."
pretty much. I mean, that was that was
Nice.
that was actually good. And then I went, and it's not that I hid it from anybody. When I went to the police to get my resident card, they were just like, oh, okay. And I told them, it's like, well, I also have another passport. It's like, well, yeah, well, okay, well, that's fine. Where's your visa on the American one? Well, that's the all we need. It's like, okay,
And
and the end of the story.
oh, wow. And do you know if that still is?
That's a long time ago. So I
So
don't. I
probably
honestly,
they
I
changed
honestly,
it.
I don't know. Well, it's Belgium, so politics in Belgium have
S
changed so
so
much in the past 10, 15 years.
okay, so maybe it hasn't changed. Oh.
I mean, I'm surprised they're still a country.
Mm.
They were breaking apart when I was there, and it's so sad. It's such a great country, and it's just so silly. But
I mean, I
never
have
mind.
yeah, I mean, you're the politics pro. I have no idea what's going on there really.
Yeah, that was something.
So how long were you then in Belgium?
It's about 4 years.
Okay, a while. And did you like it?
So at first, well, people were very nice. People were really, really nice. It took me a minute to get used to how they are,
Okay.
because I think Belgians and Dutch and many of my German friends have the same way to do. They're very blunt. They're very direct.
Okay, yeah.
And if there is something in Latin America or even in the United States that we're not, is
Blunt.
direct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
It's you try to basically beat around the bush as much as you
Yeah.
can until you figure out things. And so the first thing that it was difficult was that to get used to how direct people were. Once you get used to it and you understand that it's nothing personal, it's just how people communicate, it was fine. The weather was what really drove me nuts, because even where I was living in the United States and from Mexico,
Hmm.
you see the sun
Yeah.
sometimes. And I arrived in Belgium in September. From September through April, it rained every single day. I'm not talking
No,
about raining, pouring all the time,
but
but
drizzling.
sometimes drizzling, sometimes not so much, but then sometimes then raining horizontally with like
Sure.
wind. And I discovered that it was impossible to have an umbrella. It makes no sense to have an umbrella. You put yourself a hat on, you get yourself your hat on, you get something that is going to keep you warm, and you go out and you get soaked and then you get dry, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So the weather sucks. I did not know it's so bad in Belgium too.
It is.
Oh,
And it's great. It's
it's always
that's
great. Yeah.
that really did a number on me, because from September, October, November, well, I was getting used to it. I was homesick, and
Mm.
I had friends and I had family, and while I was
Mm-hmm.
in Belgium, it was more expensive, so I could not just go and visit my family in
Yeah.
Mexico or my friends in the United States. So I didn't return right away. It took me a while to go back. And so just the grayness of it, I don't think I got a depression, but it really got me down. It was it was
Yeah.
it was tough.
Okay. So it just like totally messed up your mood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just gray and rainy and just plain miserable.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it is that I was very, very, very lucky, and I found a group of local students.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were studying with me, some other no internationals actually, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
Locals, and they kind of like took me in, and basically they showed me around, and they showed me how Belgians survive, which is basically living on beer,
Yeah.
chocolate, and a lot of sausage.
Yeah. I was like, maybe that's why they have beer and all
Yes.
kinds of. Yes. Okay.
No, no, it was very nice. I think that without that was a great support that I had, and helped me to go through it. And honestly, it was fine. I mean, school also was really hard. The educational system in Europe it's much harder than here. Not from the point of view that things that are studied are better or harder. It's just the
Hmm.
way of how things are taught.
Okay.
It's here when you go to university, you have a lot of interaction with the teachers, and you have RAs or TAs or
Uh-huh.
somebody. There's always somebody that you can ask, and if you're lost, somebody's going to try to help you, if not right away, after you really complain and do something.
Okay.
In Belgium, it was basically you went in, you took the class, you understood, good. You don't understood, that's great too. Take the exam and get off.
Okay. So there was no interaction with the
Um,
teachers or.
you could, but which I did, and you went and stood up in front of the person if he gave you 20 minutes of his time, and basically you felt like an idiot because
Mm,
you're asking him a question and he's looking like, "Are you a moron? What don't
yeah.
you understand about this?"
Yeah.
And it was hard. I mean, it's basically a sink or swim. And one thing that I understood very quickly is that that's one of the ways that they do to try to get rid of some people from programs when there's a lot of people. Kind of like,
Okay. Do you think okay?
in general, it was fine. I mean, it was just a lot of work. And yeah.
And when was this?
This was in 1999 to about 2002.
Oh wow, that is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, like, I mean, I was like, wow, 1999. I was in school. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I got there a little bit before that, but yeah, no, that was fun, and I stayed in. I first was in the French part, and then I was able to save some money. I got a little side job, and I moved to the Flemish area. I moved to
Okay.
Leuven,
Uh-huh.
and then I discovered that it was a completely different country.
Oh, really? Is that
Oh my
so?
God, yes. Now, Flanders and Wallonia are very different.
And why is that? I mean,
Um,
or
like
how? How are they different?
um, language,
Yeah.
just the way things work. I mean, it really is
Okay.
like it really works kind of like two different countries.
But is it also like very obvious, like for
Oh yeah,
example, like architecture or something?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, the what you have in your mind about Belgian cities in terms of being very beautiful or kind of like Netherlands like or um,
Like I mean, I very old, and then very cobblestone.
yeah, that's very much the north of Belgium.
Yeah, I mean, I've been only to Brussels and I don't even know how to say it in English. Antwerp.
Antwerp, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But so that's the two big cities. Yeah, so you have Antwerp, you have Bruges, of course, which is the
Mhm.
famous city, and then you Brugge, Brugge's bridge, sorry,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Ghent, Leuven,
Mhm.
all these areas. And then in the south, you have the French-speaking cities, which, well, the biggest French-speaking city is Brussels. I mean, Brussels 90% French speakers, but
Mhm.
in the actual Wallonia, you have Charleroi, which is an industrial city. It's not particularly pretty, but it's a big town.
Uh-huh.
Uh, if I remember correctly, they used to tell me it's the youngest city in Europe.
Oh, okay.
It was basically an industrial city that was
Right.
built in the 60s,
Right.
so that's how pretty it is.
Well, the way you describe Belgium right now, it sounds like such a big country, like all the
Oh,
cities
it's
there.
not.
It's so tiny, exactly.
there is, I think somebody told me that there is not a single point in Belgium where you are that in 3 hours you cannot get out of it.
And yeah. And
So,
and there's probably not one spot in Belgium where you're not already in like a big city because it's like
yeah, that's true. That's true.
like
Yeah, it's true. It's very heavily packed. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're
mhm.
right. But that's also the difference in the south. That's in the south. You have a lot of really nice forest and mountains. That's where the nice, pretty countryside area of Belgium is. The
Uh-huh.
Les Ardennes, the mountains, and it's close to Germany actually. You have Liège, which is not far
Mhm.
from Aachen,
Yeah.
and so there is a German part of Belgium. There's actually
Yeah,
a
it's true. Mhm.
it's right next to St. Vict. I actually went camping there once, and they do speak German. I mean, it's not a myth.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It is actually the local language. For such a small country, really is like three little countries
That's
together. It's
crazy.
it's
Yeah.
fascinating. The country is fascinating. I love Belgium.
Yeah, I also always think it's very fascinating if like one country has like more than just one language.
Yes,
They speak
yes,
like I get very confused when I think about Switzerland.
right, right.
It's like what language are you guys communicating with in the same country? It's
Yeah,
like
no,
you're
in
from
in,
yeah.
in Belgium it's the same because every
Uh-huh.
sign that you have in like train stations and everything, sometimes the town's names change completely. So if you're taking a train, you should know where you're going because in both languages, because the train might be shown with the destination either in French or in Flemish.
Yeah.
So, for example, the first that comes to my head, there's a town called Courtrai in English
Mhm.
that in Flemish is called Kortrijk. It sounds familiar, but when you see it written, it's written
It's
completely different.
different. Okay. So you get super
Um,
confused, right?
yes, and a lot of people get confused about this, and so it's not unusual to find foreigners being completely lost,
Yeah.
taking the wrong train on the stations.
Yeah, I get it. I would be too.
But yeah, that was my Belgian experience. That was something nice.
And then right after you move further to
Ireland.
Ireland? Uh-huh.
So when I was trying to get my PhD, I was trying to get a scholarship or some way to actually stop paying money for this.
Mm, mhm.
And during a conference, a professor from Trinity uh, offered me a job to be her research assistant. So I got my instead of continuing trying to do a PhD in Belgium, I
Mhm.
just finished and got my master's there
Mhm.
and applied and got accepted in Trinity, basically because I mean I wanted to see what it was like. I mean it's a good school and
Mhm.
but because they were offering me a job
Yeah.
and so I went. I packed my things and I ended up in Dublin.
Uh-huh.
And that was another experience.
That's another experience. I mean, a big party city, I guess?
um, in the weekends, yes. I mean,
Uh-huh.
the Irish are great people. I love being in Ireland. They're very friendly, but at the same time, they're very clannish. They like to hang out with the people they know
Ah, that's what you mean. Okay.
and and um, and so it's very difficult to make Irish friends. We were lucky because my two of my roommates were Irish, so
Ah,
we
uh-huh.
had contact with them and with their friends, and so
Mhm.
it was fun. But when you're a foreigner, even if you're an English speaker in Ireland, it tends to be a little bit hard to make. You always can make lots of Irish acquaintances, but to actually make friendship with people locally, it's a little bit more difficult. So
Mhm.
you end up hanging out. Most foreigners end up hanging out with foreigners.
Yeah, but I mean, also as a student, it's like super easy to make friends anyway,
Mhm.
right?
That's true, and yeah, that was a little bit different. Ireland also, the weather was a little bit harsh, but
Right.
at that time, Belgium had trained me well.
Okay, so you are already used to it's like the weather is
Yeah,
not making any
the
whatever any
joke
point anymore.
when I went to an interview for that job, I think one the dean of the department was telling me, it's like, well, I hope you like the weather in Ireland. It's they say that Ireland has four seasons, and I was like, is that so? It's like, yeah, four seasons in a day.
Yeah,
In the
okay.
morning, in the morning it's nice, then it starts raining, then it gets sunny, and then you start freezing in the afternoon.
Yeah, right.
So, but no, it was nice. I That was a little bit more difficult to get used to. Funny enough, for me, Ireland was more difficult to get used to than Belgium.
Well, the weather?
No,
No.
just things in general.
Okay. But
Um, yeah,
why was that? I mean, because language was not a problem anymore.
no, no, no. It's not. It was not language. It's just a way of living. I mean, Ireland was a country that for a long time was not doing so well financially.
Right.
And then when we got there, it was the boom. That's where actually Ireland was
Mhm.
doing super, super well financially,
Mhm.
but still was very rural and very, this very wartime economy mentality.
Mhm.
So you would go to the supermarkets, for example, from the time that I got there to the time that I left, I really saw massive changes on just the quality of life of people.
Yeah.
Like for example, when we first got there, you could get maybe one kind of potato chips, which is the local ones called potatoes. By the time I left, there was like every single thing that you can imagine on the shelves. I mean, it was
Right.
just
Okay.
crazy.
Okay. But
Um,
so how far or like how long ago when you got there was that conflict over?
oh, you
Like
mean the
that?
the troubles?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the troubles. I got there way after that.
Yeah, it was already like it was
The
in the
troubles,
90s, but I
yeah, the Good Friday Agreement, I think,
yeah.
was signed over in '98. The IRA still hadn't laid down their weapons. I was
Right.
there when the IRA made the official announcement that they had decommissioned. So I was actually watching TV when they played the tape in which the official person or somebody that was giving the announcement that the IRA was decommissioning. That was in 2004, I think.
Mhm.
And I arrived in Ireland in 2002.
Yeah, so that was not really a long
Um,
time.
yeah, no, I mean, I went to Belfast in 2000, and
Mhm.
you could still see that it was a little bit weird. You really didn't walk in certain areas, but
Mm.
now they actually have
I know. Yeah.
tourist groups that go to the areas where they have all the murals and stuff. It's just insane for me to think about it because the British paras had only left Ireland a couple of years before I left, and now all the checkpoints and everything are kind of like selling you souvenirs. It's the most
Yeah, but
bizarre thing.
my brother was just telling me that they went to Ireland a few years ago, and they also went to like one zone that was it was like right the border, and it
Yes,
was like kind of like a long hallway with huge walls,
yes, yes.
and then
Those are
all
the
the
checkpoints. Yeah.
houses, all the houses, like on the other sides, they had like some protection over their roofs. Just
Yes.
in case like other people like from the other side like throwing a Molotov cocktail or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. No.
crazy, right?
Yes. No. It was some time. No. I didn't get to see any of that at all. But
Yeah.
I did get to talk to people, or there were people that had stories. And there is a bar in Dublin called the Celt, and
Mhm.
it's very famous to be a very very Republican bar, and it was not unusual to meet people there that had a story or two about the troubles. And
Mhm.
it's a touchy subject because it is still means something for people there. I mean, it's not that long ago that it's ancient history. I mean, there are still people that went through it, and there's a lot of things that were not so nice that happened. So it's a delicate matter to talk to some
Yeah,
people.
I think still is.
Well, but in general, I mean, most people, especially the young generation, they just don't care. I mean,
Mm.
there's a lot of there's a lot of people that come from Ulster, from the five counties down to Dublin to hang out,
Mhm.
and you run into them in the bars. So it's never a problem. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not an issue, and there is really not a Protestant Catholic divide. I mean, it's more of, again, more political rather than religious, because most
Mhm.
people in Ireland is they're not really religious. I mean, the church is still plays a big role, but most young people, I mean, they don't go to church.
Mhm.
It's more like an institutional thing,
Yeah.
kind of like in Italy, I think.
Mhm.
It's like people are Catholic, are institutionally Catholic, but in their everyday life, they just go on about with their business.
Right, right.
So
Yeah. And so how long were you there?
I was in Ireland for about 6 years.
Oh, that's quite a long time.
Yeah, I was able to do my degree, and then I got a job. I started working for first, it was a smaller company that hired me, and then as a contractor, and then I got hired into working for Hewlett Packard.
Okay.
As
Ah.
well, Hewlett Packard was the so this is how things work in Ireland. I was a contractor for Hewlett Packard, who then hired me to be a contractor for the Bank of Ireland,
Oh,
which
okay.
then in turn the Bank of Ireland hired me.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly how it works, but that's how it ended up. So I was working. Actually, my paychecks were signed by Hewlett Packard. So it was, although I was working for the Bank of Ireland,
Okay.
and yeah, as an economist. So
Ah, okay. Did you go back home to your Mexico?
yeah, yeah, I did.
Mhm.
I did. From Ireland, it was super expensive. I think the first time that I visited my parents, When I was in Ireland, it cost me something like $2,500 round trip. Um,
Yeah, that is
and
something.
and this is like in 2004, so it was very expensive.
Yeah, that is expensive.
So
That is still
I
is expensive.
yeah, I mean, I would come and see my family, but not as often. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
I would have a chance to go to United States and visit my friends. And then I met Rachel, which you
Mm-hmm.
have talked to,
Yeah.
and I took her once or twice to Mexico while we were in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was just my life just become much easier when I met her, because it's easier. I believe that it's easier to be in a foreign country if you are in a couple than if you're by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It
can see
just
that. Uh-huh.
it just works a little bit easier and better. And she being a foreigner as well, she understood where I was coming from, so I didn't have to explain myself. So it was kind of odd, although she was French and I was Mexican, and we were in Ireland. We had more things in common
Uh-huh.
together in a third country, and made, I think, things easier for us to
Like,
communicate and deal with.
yeah, and you could always like talk shit about the Irish.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's so much true. I have a funny story. We used to have an apartment that was right in the center of downtown. We were super lucky. I don't think that place was up to code or everything, because our floor was kind of like sinking, and we had like a hole in the wall. Never mind. But it was we could afford it, and it was
Uh-huh.
right downtown. And in front of us there was a whole array of bars, as
Mm-hmm.
if you ever go down to Dublin, and there's some streets that is just full of bars.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that on Saturday nights, when we had nothing to do and we really didn't want to go out, we'd just pull chairs, we'll make popcorn, and just look at the fights outside of the
Oh,
bars.
yeah, okay.
And seriously, I'm not joking. It was hilarious. I
No,
mean, it's not
really.
hilarious because the
But
police will get involved and stuff like that, but
yeah,
it was quite something.
it was like even in the movies because they're always fighting.
Well, it's always when they let people out. It's a lot of drunk kids
Uh-huh.
doing stupid things, talking loud, being obnoxious,
Uh-huh.
and eventually one gets into somebody else's skin, and
Right.
a fight breaks out, and it's not a stereotype. I mean, it happens in England as well, and in
Well,
Britain, but
yeah, I guess it's just England in general, right?
but I do remember that when we used to go out, we specifically tried to leave the place before it was last call, because we knew that it was just gonna turn funny. And it's like, and then you can never catch a cab, and then it's hell
Uh-huh.
to try to get
Yeah.
home. And everybody tries to go and get these obnoxious kebabs in a place very famous in
Mm.
Ireland called
Mm-hmm.
Abra Kebabra.
Okay.
And yeah, it's the whole experience. But we had a good time there. It was just very expensive.
Okay. And so what happened then after Ireland?
Well, to be quite honest, we were thinking of staying in Ireland. We
Ah, okay,
almost
you were.
we
Okay.
almost we almost decided to live there. I mean, it was an option. I had a job and things were going well. I mean, we had friends.
Uh-huh.
We were kind of settled. But the problem was that we sat down and we actually took a hard look at how things were going. If we ever wanted to buy a house or something, it was
Ah,
very,
okay.
very expensive.
Mm.
The kind of jobs that we had, we would have to basically just slave it over, or just really move out of the city or going to the
Right.
countryside, which is fine. I mean, Ireland is beautiful. Outside of Dublin, it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just got an opportunity to work for the Department of Interior for the government in the United States.
Mm, okay. Did you apply for this or?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Ah,
did. I
okay.
did.
So you were looking.
I was just looking to look, kind of
Uh-huh.
thing, just kind of like having a plan B type of thing.
Yeah.
And I had a friend from the embassy that chatted me into He's like, well, I'm sure that with your background and stuff, you probably could work for the government and this and that. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, people people talk sweet
Yeah,
things in
yeah.
your ear,
Mm-hmm.
and I did, and then I got it.
Was it an issue though, for you guys that you got a job opportunity in the United States?
Um, well, we're kind of odd.
Yeah, I mean, already I talked to Rachel, so I already was like, oh yeah, you had like a super easygoing relationship with you were everywhere and you flew everywhere and it was not a problem. So,
So at the time, yeah, no, I mean, it was hard, of course. I mean, it's true. It's not a joke when you move out and you kind of like are half settled.
mhm.
But it was just too much of a good opportunity to let go. I mean, that's my job still. I've been there for
Ah, okay, you
50.
still
I'm still at that job. Yeah,
oh
that's
wow.
that's that's why we are in Washington.
Yeah, I
Uh,
figured there must be something with the government.
yeah, I came over and basically was like, okay, I'm gonna try it out and see how it works out.
Mhm.
And then when when things are settled, I mean, you come over. It's like, all right, not a problem.
Uh-huh.
And as it turns out, one part of my job involved a lot of traveling, specifically to Europe.
Uh-huh.
So it was very easy for me to go for work, and I will be, for example, doing something for my job for like 2 or 3 weeks. Uh, let's say in Belgium or in
Mhm.
Vienna or in Rome or
All right.
something, and then I will be able to take as much time as I was there for my work as vacation.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah,
what I will do is I would just basically go and stay with her.
sure. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then so in that way, we actually saw each other quite quite a lot for a long time. I mean, she would
Mhm.
come here in the summers and in Easter or in Christmas, and
Yeah.
then in between I would be there probably 2 or 3 times.
Okay, because she was a teacher. Yes.
That is correct. And so I guess that's why it worked out, because there was never a period that we didn't see that we were not together for more than maybe 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that is, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is
That's
not even like you were working overseas on the other side
right.
of the Atlantic. Yeah.
So that worked out, and it worked out for a very long time. I
Did
mean,
you know
it's
this when you took the job that you would travel abroad?
I knew that I was going to travel abroad, and at first I was going to go into the Africa unit,
Uh-huh.
which it would have sent me to very different places.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the first travel that they wanted me to do was going to go to have a nice stay at the Central African Republic, hanging out with a lot of French
Mhm.
uh, legionnaires doing a
Oh, okay.
survey of XYZ. And I was not able to take that travel for other reasons, so I didn't end up getting it. But then they ended up putting me on the European section,
Mhm.
and that worked out real well.
Nice. That was a nice surprise then.
Yeah, no, it was good. I actually got to Germany quite a few times.
Oh, okay.
I really enjoyed going there. I was able to go to Berlin. I was in Hamburg. I was in Stuttgart a couple of times.
And you were also in Turkey for a while, right?
Yes, yes, I was in Turkey. I spent quite a long time in Turkey actually. Well, not long, but periods of like 3 4 months at a time.
Oh, okay.
So it was. I really like Turkey. Turkey's a nice place.
The longest you were overseas was Dublin then, and then like
Right,
uh-huh.
right. Yeah, I was in Ireland. I was 6 years, so that was the longest stretch. Yes.
And then y you went back to the US full
Hmm.
time, but more like traveling.
Right.
And are you still traveling or
No, everything changed after COVID.
mhm.
Right now, travel stopped completely,
Okay.
like completely stopped, and that's one of the reasons why also we couldn't see each other. But
Mhm.
with Rachel, and that's why we the middle of watching a really funny show. I think it was The Good Witch or something really cheesy on TV. It was like, you know what? Let's get married. And she was like,
Yeah.
and you know the rest of the story.
Yeah, I mean, okay, it makes sense, right? Because then you don't have to deal with, especially after COVID, because it's like, oh my God, like, can I go anywhere?
Yeah,
Can I
no,
just
it
hop
was
on a
terrible.
flight?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for us it was devastating really because it was we were again we were used to. It's not that yes we were apart, but we were not used to be apart.
apart for so long.
All right, if you know
Uh-huh.
what I mean.
Yeah, and or like
So
at least you knew when it was coming, but with COVID, it was like, when will this end?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and then when travel of work actually changed, that was terrible because I couldn't do the last trip that I was able to do that I was able to see her. I think it was a trip that I did to Switzerland, and she was able to come and see me, and we spent time in Geneva. But that was it, and after that, it just everything stopped, and it's just starting to pick up again.
Uh, okay.
Um, I'm going to have to start traveling again, but it's been 4 years. I mean,
Okay. That's been a
it's
while.
yeah.
So, okay, so and how long is it now since you were back in the US?
Oof. Got back here in 2008.
Okay. Oh,
So
wow. Okay, it is a while. So
yeah.
do you say this is now your home?
Um. Well, they say home is where the heart is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, it feels like home. I mean, specifically being here in Washington, in the we live in the Northern Virginia side, which is odd because I all the area that I knew from Washington when I was living here in college was on the Maryland side. So I didn't know anything about the Virginia area. And for people or for you, if you don't know, Washington D.C. itself is very small.
Mhm.
It's only about maybe 10 kilometers square.
Okay.
But Washington D.C. itself is huge, but it's the
Okay.
metropolitan area, and half of it is on the Virginia side, and the other half of the metropolitan area is on the Maryland side.
Mhm.
So the joke here is when people say I'm from DC, and they're like, "Oh, so you're from Virginia, Maryland?"
Right.
Because there's nobody really from DC
From this,
unless
uh-huh.
I mean there is people that are from DC, but it's very small
Yeah.
amount of people. Yeah, no, I think by now we're kind of settled here. I mean, it's pretty, it's nice where we are. The only thing that we cannot get used to is just super expensive.
Yeah. I
It's
bet.
like New York expensive,
Mhm.
and quality of life is very good. I I will tell you that. But the amount of I don't know if you're familiar with the what they call the Big Mac price index.
No.
There is this economic theory, not theory. It's a somebody proposed this as a way to figure out how expensive a part of
Uh,
the country is
uh-huh.
if you compare the prices of Big Macs
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
each part of the country. And so when you go to places where it's very cheap, well, you find out how much it is, and then you compare it to the national standard. And I think the national standard right now is about like $3.54, and the Big Mac over here is almost $6.
Okay, wow, yeah. I have to
So
check how much it is here because I don't
no, but really, there's even a
I gotta
website.
check it.
There's some economics geek guy that probably I'm sure put it online, but it's a way just to figure out your average price level of consumables and how
Huh.
expensive things are.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, here everybody is complaining as well that everything got so expensive.
Hmm.
So we lived before in San Francisco, in the San Francisco
Oh,
area, where
that's bad.
everything is very expensive. So when we moved to Austin, it was like, oh, everything is so cheap, right? And,
Yeah,
and then everybody else around us was like, this is so expensive, and we're like, oh, what are you talking about, But
yeah, no.
now we're also like, wow, it is really expensive.
You
But
know, it's just crazy because I mean, I was just talking to my boss the other day because they were complaining about the prices and having a family around here and all, and and we were just amazed because the average income, for example, on the 2 or 3 counties around DC,
oh god, it must
it,
be really
it's
high.
it's the average income per family is like
That
$220,000,
is crazy. So
and
high.
but still people can't afford to buy a house because the starter price of most townhomes, it's about $750,000.
Yeah,
Here's we have a
it's
lot
complicated.
of companies that are making this
Mm,
and they're making a lot of money out of it,
mm,
but I think it's a bubble. I think eventually this
yeah.
is going to go this way, the south way, and I don't think it's going to be a
Mm,
good thing. But anyway, that's one of the reasons why we started thinking about moving somewhere else. But at the moment, unfortunately, I think if you don't have momentum to move somewhere, it's difficult. You just
yeah.
wants to stay where you're
Yeah,
comfortable.
exactly. I know it. Yeah. And so I have written one question here that was before this conversation. I had like wondered, did you move around a lot because you didn't have like a lot of roots? Because I mean, with that you moved around a lot as a kid.
No, not necessarily. I mean, the family of my dad had a bus. I mean, was not my dad personally, but his extended family
Uh-huh.
and all the people. They had a bus company, like like a Greyhound type of thing,
Yeah.
and a transportation. And we did travel a lot as kids, but mostly for fun. And we had
Okay.
we had family in Texas, in the United States. We went very often. We stayed there sometimes. We lived there for a
Uh,
bit.
okay.
Um, and my father, in particular, was somebody that, like on a Sunday, he was bored watching TV, and he will tell me, "Come over." I was like, "Where are we going? Let's go. Just come over." Okay, and I'll go with him, and we'll go to the bus station in the morning, and he will just pick a bus, and we'll go there. And I was like, "Where are we going?" "I don't know. We'll see." And the first town that the bus ended up, we got off and we just looked around the town, and then we'll come back in the evening. And
Mm-hmm.
that was his thing. He just liked going out places he had never been and just look around and have a coffee, have an ice cream. I was very lucky. He'll try to teach me that,
Yeah.
and I guess I kind of picked that up. It's not that I don't have roots because I am very sure of myself and who I
Mm-hmm.
am and where I come from,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that I never felt that I had been in a place as if I don't belong.
Right.
It's more kind of like you you make home where you go if you have the chance. I mean, there are people that might not see it that way, but if you're going to be in a place for a long time, you might as well make yourself comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
I like to see what was at the other side of the hill, so I guess that was since I was a very little kid.
Were you guys ever thinking of moving to France, for instance, where Rachel is from?
I think that she's very much like me in the respect that if we were to move, whether if it's France or whether if it's Mexico, it would not necessarily be exactly where we come from because we like family, but
Mm-hmm.
we like to go and visit family,
Yeah.
if
Mm-hmm.
you know what
Okay,
I mean.
sure. Okay, so yeah.
So yeah, sure. I like France. I like certain parts of France more than some more than others, but
Uh-huh.
I think it would be more interesting, or there'll be other places that we will rather see rather than going back to the same places. But who knows? I mean, honestly, at the moment we're fine here, and where we go next, it will really depend what at that moment we need and what we want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, France would be a great place. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, also you're in your job already for
oh
15
yes,
plus years, so I
yes.
guess.
At this point, I'm just looking for retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. All right,
When to be retired? Let's go
and
to
then you can make other plans.
let's go to the Bahamas. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows?
Oh,
No,
she just
okay,
yelled.
hell
She
no.
just yelled from.
Heard it.
She just-
Too many
But,
hurricanes.
yeah, yeah. No, that would not be a. There you go.
No way. Also, it probably will be underwater.
Yes, but yeah, no. I mean, I'm starting to get more set on my way. So I like I one of the funny things about traveling, for me, and you're going to find this very strange. I mean, at least most people I tell this they do. I hate hotels.
Mm-hmm.
I hate not sleeping in my bed.
Mm-hmm.
I hate not having familiar things next to me. And so when I was traveling, I despised being that long, away from a familiar environment.
Uh-huh.
And that's why for me it was great that I was able to just basically go out and stay with Rachel, because I will basically be hell for me for 2 3 weeks, and then I go and be like, okay,
Yes.
I'm home. It's
Yes.
France, but it's home.
But yeah.
And then it was fine. And so when we go on vacations, it's kind of like trying to find out a balance between places we want to see and people and places that I can stand being in.
Okay, so you don't go to hotels.
I try not to. No, I it would be better for us to maybe get an Airbnb
Yeah.
or get a cabin somewhere. I just find hotels really depressing. And
Um,
if you ever gone in a business trip, you know how depressing hotels with
I know
businessmen can be.
I know the I know the hotels, but also I grew up in a hotel because my parents had a hotel. So and it was more like a bed and breakfast or like an
Right,
inn, but
right,
our apartment was inside of the same building.
right.
So no, I totally get it. It's like the feeling of the linen,
Yes.
that hard
Uh,
starchy linens, and
yes.
I don't know. It's
It's. Have you ever seen Lost in Translation?
yeah, I have seen that.
That basically encapsulates my entire sentiment about it. It's just kind of like the most depressing thing. You finish work, you come back, you go to the bar. There's two dudes on the bar basically
Uh,
just stirring something. There's some random person singing off key on the background,
yes,
and then you're just looking at your glass and you're like, what the hell am I doing here?
yeah, that lonely hotel room all by
Yes.
yourself. I totally
Watching
get it.
watching fantastic local TV in a language that probably you cannot understand.
Uh-huh. I totally understand. Because I mean, like you talk about like business travel, but I think if you go on vacation, it's maybe a little bit different because you
No,
do
no, it's
stuff
true. It's true.
together and you do fun stuff.
It's
It's a little bit different.
no, it's true. And I think I'm just being a little bit hard headed, and
Yes. And
probably
maybe
Rachel's
like,
gonna hit me over the head about this. But
yes, it's like complaining on a high standard. Yes. Yeah.
but yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're coming to an end because this is gonna be a very long episode otherwise.
No, I appreciate it, and I hope
No.
I wasn't too boring for
Oh
you.
no, not at all. Not at all. Thank you for taking the time. I tell everyone thank you for taking your time. That was Alex's story, everyone. And I just did some Googling about the Big Mac price. And yeah, they vary in all kinds of cities. So I just checked out the prices for the area where I live, and it's $3.75, where I still think that's very cheap, considering that everything around here is exploding in the prices. But for example, in San Francisco, it's $12. Even for Berlin, where food in Germany is always kind of more affordable, it's almost €8. So that's pretty expensive. If you want to learn more about the Big Mac price index, you can check it out. There's even like a Wikipedia article about it. Yeah, it was nice to hear some Irish history today. I always find this very interesting. And then also it was nice to learn about some studying comparison between the US and Europe. And then I feel like I have to explain it because I said, excuse me, talking shit about the Irish. That's not, I didn't mean it in a bad way. It was just like in a funny way, and I hope people don't misunderstand it because I feel nowadays you have to say it if you don't mean it. People always understand things wrong. Okay, so I think that is enough said for this week's episode. It was the longest episode that we had so far. Thanks, Alex, to be on my podcast again, and hi, Rachel, again. And for everyone else who's listening, thank you for tuning in this week, and thank you for listening to the whole episode, and I hope you tune in again next time. Bye!